ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु वभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 4, Vidura approaches Maitreya. And we are at the section where Uddhava's special role in Lord Krishna's disappearance. So we are at text 29. Can somebody read? Yesterday we have seen the words. Translation and then purport.
Translation. Shukadeva Goswami replied, My dear king, the cursing of the Brahmanas was only a plea, but the actual fact was the supreme desire of the Lord. He wanted to disappear from the face of the earth after dispatching his excessively numerous family members. He thought to himself as follows. Purport. In this verse, the word Tyakshan is very significant in relation to Lord Shri Krishna's leaving his body, since he is the eternal form of existence, knowledge, and bliss. His body and his self are identical. Therefore, how is it possible that he would leave his body and then disappear from the vision of the world? There is a great controversy.
Should I continue, Prabhuji?
Yes.
There is a great controversy amongst the non-devotees and or Mayavadis about the mysterious disappearance of the Lord, and the doubts of those men with poor fund of knowledge have been very elaborately cleared by Srila Jiva Goswami in his Krishna Sandarbha. According to Brahma Samhita, the Lord has many forms. It is stated therein that the Lord has innumerable forms, and when he appears within the vision of the living entities as Lord Krishna actually appeared, all such forms amalgamate within him. Besides all these infallible forms, he has his universal form as manifested before Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Herein this verse, the word spitam is also used, which indicates that he left his gigantic universal form called the Virat Rupa, not his primeval eternal form, because there is hardly any possibility of his changing his form of Satchid Ananda. This simple understanding is at once realized by the devotees of the Lord. But those who are non devotees, who perform hardly any devotional service to the Lord, either do not understand this simple fact or purposely raise a controversy to defeat the eternity of the transcendental body of the Lord. This is due to the defect called cheating propensity of the imperfect living entities. By practical example experience also, it is seen up to the present day that the Lord's transcendental form is worshipped by devotees in different temples, and all the devotees of the Lord factually realize that the form of the deity in the temple is non different from the form of the Lord. This inconceivable performance of the internal potency of the Lord is described in Bhagavad Gita 7.25. Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yoga Maya Samavrata. The Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to everyone. In the Padma Purana, it is stated, Atah Shri Krishna Namadi Na Bhavet Grahyam Indriya. The name and form of the Lord cannot be perceived by material senses. But when he appears within the vision of the mundane people, he assumes the form of the Virat Rupa. And this is an additional material exhibition of form and is supported by the logic of a subject and and its adjective. In grammar, when an adjective is taken away from the subject is modified. The subject it modifies does not change. Similarly, when the Lord quits his Virat Rupa, his eternal form does not change, although there is no material difference between himself and any of his innumerable forms. In the fifth canto, it will be seen how the Lord is worshipped in different planets and his different forms, even now, and and how he is worshipped in different temples of this earth also. Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur have very elaborately explained this incident of the Lord's disappearance in their commentaries, quoting various authentic versions of Vedic literatures. We purposely do not include them all here to avoid the increase in the volume of this book. The entire matter is explained in Bhagavad Gita as quoted above. The Lord reserves the right of not being exposed to everyone. He always keeps himself out of the vision of the non devotees, who are devoid of the love and devotion, and thus he puts them still further away from the Lord. The Lord appeared on the invitation of Brahma, who prayed before Shirodakshai Vishnu, and therefore, when the Lord appeared, all the forms of Vishnu amalgamated with him, and when the mission was fulfilled, all of them disintegrated from him in the usual course. Hare Krishna.
So here, Shukadeva Goswami explains, cursing of the Brahmanas was only the plea, but it was actually the desire of the Supreme Lord who wanted to dispatch his excessively numerous family members, Yadus, and the Lord began to think as follows. Right. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada describes the disappearance of the Supreme Lord. Srila Prabhupada says that the word takshanam is very significant in this relation, and the Lord's leaving a form behind, to which even Arjuna is going to do the Antya of that Kalevara that is being left behind, is very, very bewildering to people. Sometimes it is bewildering to devotees as well. So Prabhupada gives very elaborate purport here. So Prabhupada says there is a great controversy behind the Lord leaving the form behind. Right. And this controversy is there only for the form of Krishna. See, again, there are three great personalities. The Supreme Personality appears as Lord Shri Ram. There is nothing called as Rama Samadhi or anything, because the Supreme Lord, along with all the Ayodhya Vasis, went back to Godhead directly. Even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he also disappeared. There is, you go to Mayapur, you go to Jagannath Puri, or you go to any other place, there is nothing called as Mahaprabhu's Samadhi. Why? Because Mahaprabhu also disappeared. He entered the deity of Tota Gopinath temple. Okay. And they will, if you go way early in the morning for the Mangalarti of Tota Gopinath, Mangalarti temple, Mangalarti, you know, they side away the cloth that the Lord is wearing, and they show a kind of a place where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu disappeared himself within the deity, right? But in case of the Supreme Lord Krishna left a calaver behind when he went his abode. And therefore, there is a great controversy. And this is generally devotees of the Lord do not want to talk about disappearance of the Lord. But this controversy is very elaborately explained by Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Very, very elaborate discussion. So Srila Prabhupada is going to quote here Krishna Sandarbha from of Srila Jiva Goswami. So one thing to understand is that the Supreme Lord has innumerable forms. Advaitamachyutam anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayavvanam cha. This is Brahma Samhita. Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Anantarupa. The Supreme Lord has infinite forms. But when the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, who is Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, when he descends through the medium of Kshirodakshai Vishnu, all the Vishnu Tattvas, they also amalgamate in the form of the Lord and they also come. And that's why you will hear the commentary that the demons in Vrindavan, they were not killed by Krishna of Krishna, but Vishnu within Krishna. Okay. So, because Krishna of Krishna is simply happy with the Brajavasis. That is also one of the explanations Acharyas give there. So the point here is that when the Supreme Lord, especially Lord Krishna appears, because he is Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, Ete Chamsa Kala Pumsa, other incarnations, they are either Kala, they are either Kala, Amsha, or Amsha of the Amsha. And of course, there is no difference between them. But still, when we are discussing the Tattva Vichar, we know that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Sri Krishna. Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. And when the Supreme Lord appears, all the incarnations, they amalgamate within the personality of Godhead because he is the Ekale Ishvara Krishna. He is the master of the master. Correct. Just like, for example, some big industrialist has many companies and he has, the factories everywhere, say Ambani or Adani. Okay, so we'll say Adani's example because he is in news these days. And when Mr. Adani directly comes to any factory, all other people will come. All the top guys of that factory will be coming. The CEO will come. The president of that factory will come. Vice president will come. Everybody will come because, such a person, the owner is directly coming. Similarly, when the Supreme Lord appears, all other incarnations, they also amalgamate within the Supreme Lord, although there is no difference between them. They are Swamsha expansions. But they are also eager to see pastimes of the Lord. And what is the proof? The proof is Mahavishnuji stealing boy after boy to see Krishna and Arjuna together in Dwaraka, right? He is stealing boys, Brahmana boys, that pastime. So, and late previously also we have seen one very beautiful verse that what to speak of the people in this world, even the Vaikuntapati, incarnations of the Lord in Vaikuntha, they were also mesmerized by the form of the Lord. There was a beautiful verse before this. So the one thing is when Supreme Lord appears, all incarnations amalgamate within the Supreme Lord. And these are the spiritual incarnations. Along with that, even the Virata Rupa is also within the body of the Supreme Lord. Right. So when the Lord leaves, nothing happens to his Sachidananda, the original form of the Lord. Right. Nothing happens to the soul, what to speak of the Lord. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, na chaidyam kledyantyaapo, no shoshayati maruta. So if it is nainam chindanti, for even the ordinary soul is not killed, what to speak of the Supreme Soul? So nothing happens to the Supreme Lord, but when the Lord leaves, he leaves behind a portion of Virata Rupa, which is looking like his own form, Kalevara, so that he can bewilder people in Kali Yuga. The immediate yuga is Kali Yuga, which is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. And therefore, just to give, Acharyas explain very beautiful points. One point they say, just to bewilder the impersonalist, Lord leaves behind a portion of Virat Rupa as Kalevaram. The second reason, Acharyas say, the second reason is that Lord leaves Kalevaram so that people, at least out of controversy, will take Krishna's names and discuss about Krishna. And this is how their Agyat Sukruti will be increased. Prabhupada says that this is very simple to understand. And it is explained by such great scholar as Srila Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So this is the understanding. And further, Prabhupada says, the forms of the Lord, they are non-different than the Lord, just like we have deities in the temple. But still, people will not understand because Naham Prakasha Sarvasya Yogamaya Samavrita. The Lord reserves the right to be non-exposed to such a challenging person. And therefore, when the Lord has his own original form, a part of his form is also Virata Rupa. But when Virata Rupa Lord gives, away as the Kalevara when he is departing, that doesn't affect the form of the Supreme Lord, the original form. The Prabhupada says the logic is the subject and the adjective. In the grammar, when the adjective is taken away from the subject, the subject it modifies does not change. So what it means is, in a simple term, just like somebody is the actor and he takes a role, and in the role he dies, that does not mean the actor has been dead. He has taken an additional role, and something has happened to the additional identity that he has taken that doesn't change the original identity of the actor. Similarly, Lord is Sachidananda Vigraha, and from him only comes Virata Rupa, right? And he just leaves Virata Rupa, portion of it, and people become bewildered. And there is a reason for such bewilderment is because advent of Kali Yuga, Lord wants to keep Mayavadis away from Srimad Bhagavatam and the pure devotional service. And third is, by the virtue of being a controversy, Lord is always discussed, right? Always discussed by people of Kali Yuga. And this is confirmed by Srila Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who are the scholars at the at par. I mean, there is there is nobody at par with these personalities, even by all calculations. Okay, apart from Sampradaya, it is not that because only Vaishnavas we say these are the great scholars. No, the god of impersonalism is Varanasi, and Varanasi's highest institute is ITBHU. We have our, the Lakshman Nitai Prabhu who attends classes here. He is a professor. He is a PhD from ITBHU. And there we have a department called as Jiva Goswami department. So it is not just a Vaishnava mat. That Jiva Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, they are considered as the scholars. There is nobody equal to them. If you compare it, they can be compared only to Vesavas, even according to the modern understanding of the scholarship. And this is their opinion. Prabhupada says they have written elaborate commentary, but we have no space here. Otherwise, the volume of the book will be huge, and therefore we have just introduced a part of their commentary. Okay. So this is also people's doubt when they hear that when Madhai hit Nityanand Prabhu, Nityanand Prabhu started bleeding. And people say, Are, Nityanand Prabhu is to Balaramji, Balarama Hoila Nitai. And how come blood can come from the body of Nityanand Prabhu? What is the answer? The answer is, what to speak of blood? Entire universes are flowing from the body of the Supreme Lord. Universes are material, correct? What to speak of a small? So this is a pastime of the Lord, where Lord manifests, this even the secondary nature originating from Him. Actually, because everything originates from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 30. अस्मात् लोकानुपरते मयि ज्ञानं मदाश्रयम् अर्हति उद्धव एव श्रद्धा संप्राप्ति आत्मवतां वरः. Translation.
Translation. Now I shall leave the vision of this mundane world, and I see that Uddhava, the foremost of my devotees, is the only one who can be directly entrusted with knowledge about me. Purport. Jnanam Mada Ashrayam is significant in this verse. Transcendental knowledge has three departmental divisions, namely knowledge of impersonal Brahman, knowledge of the all-pervading super soul, and knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Out of the three, transcendental knowledge of the personality of Godhead has special significance and is known as Bhagavata Tattva Vijnana, specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. This specific knowledge is realized by pure devotional service and no other means. Bhagavad Gita 18.55 confirms this. Bhaktaya mam abhijananti yavan yasashmi tattvaha. Only persons engaged in devotional service can factually know the transcendental position of the Lord. Uddhava was considered to be the best amongst all devotees of that time, and therefore he was directly instructed by the Lord's grace so that people might take advantage of Uddhava's knowledge after the disappearance of the Lord from the vision of the world. This is one of the reasons why Uddhava was advised to go to Badrikashram, where the Lord is personally represented by the Naranarayana deity. One who is transcendently advanced can gain direct inspiration from the temple deity, and thus a devotee of the Lord always takes shelter of a recognized temple of the Lord in order to make tangible advancement in transcendental knowledge by the grace of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
So the Lord began to think, now I shall leave the vision of the mundane world. Right. So now the Lord is going to conclude his pastimes. And Uddhava, the foremost of his devotees, is the only one to whom this direct knowledge can be entrusted to. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, Jnanam Mada Ashrayam is significant in this verse. The transcendental knowledge has three department divisions. Which are these three? Vadanti tat tattva vedas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdate. That the supreme absolute truth can be realized in these three phases of Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And this knowledge, which we quote and which we discuss so many times, is unknown to millions of people. People just don't know. Even, like in our Marathi, there are so many songs. Tuja Saguna Manu ki Nirguna re. Okay, there are so many songs talking about whether the Lord is Sagun or Nirgun. If he's Nirgun, then Nirgun has become Sagun, and there is such a great confusion. But the Lord clarifies the entire knowledge to Uddhavaji. And why Uddhava? Uddhava, because he is one of the best among the devotees at that time. And the special qualification of being a devotee is that by devotional service, one can actually understand the Supreme Lord Tattvataha. Right. Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvatah. And that's why the Supreme Lord, he instructed Uddhava, who is the best of the devotees, and instructed him to go to Badrikashram and make this knowledge available everywhere. This knowledge will come, the discussion of Krishna and Uddhava in the 11th canto, very, very elaborate discussion on pure devotional service and how to perform the devotional service. Srila Prabhupada says, at Badrikashram, there is the deity of Naranarayan Rishi, and those who are very advanced, they can receive the inspiration from the temple deities, and therefore the devotees should always take shelter of the recognized temple of the Lord in order to make tangible advancement by the grace of the Lord. So this is about visiting temple, right? Temple is also called as Shakti Pitha. Okay, this is, I was reading from somewhere. Shakti Pitha means where there is a congregational sadhana is performed, there is a very special potency. Like sometimes people have this doubt, Prabhuji, I also have deities in my house. Should I go to temple or not? One should 100% go to temple for sadhana, because there is congregational sadhana is being performed at that place. That place becomes immensely potent and powerful. Text 31. न उद्धव अणु अपि भीमत् न्यून यत् गुणैर्नादित प्रभु अत मद्वयूनन् लोकन् ग्राहयन् इह तिष्ठतु. Translation.
Uddhava is not inferior to me in any way because he is never affected by the modes of material nature. Therefore, he may remain in this world in order to disseminate specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Purport: the specific qualification for becoming the representative of the Lord is to be unaffected by the material modes of nature. The highest qualification of person in the material world is to be a Brahmana. But since a Brahmana is in the mode of goodness, to be a Brahmana is not sufficient for becoming a representative of the Lord. One has to transcend the modes of goodness also and be situated in the unalloyed goodness, unaffected by any of the qualities of the material nature. This stage of transcendental qualification is called Shuddha Sattva or Vasudev, and in this stage of the science of God can be realized. As the Lord is not affected by the modes of material nature, so a pure devotee of the Lord is also not affected by the modes of nature. That is the primary qualification for being one with the Lord. A person who is able to attain this transcendental qualification is called Jivan Mukta or liberated, even though he is apparently in material condition. This liberation is achieved by one who is constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. In the Bhakti Rasamrut Sindhu 1.2.187, it is stated, Iha yasya hare dasye karmana manasa gira nikhilashva avasthasu jivan mukta sauchyate. Anyone who, by his actions, mind and words, lives only for the transcendental loving service of the Lord is certainly a liberated soul, even though he may appear to be in the condition of material existence. Uddhava was in such a transcendental position, and thus he was selected to be the factual representative of the Lord in his bodily absence from the vision of the world. Such a devotee of the Lord is never affected by the material strength, intelligence, or even renunciation. Such a devotee of Lord can withstand all onslaughts of material nature, and therefore he is known as Goswami. Only such Goswamis can penetrate the mysteries of the Lord's transcendental loving relationships.
So while leaving Uddhava behind, the Lord is thinking, Uddhava is not inferior to me because he is never affected by the modes of material nature, and therefore he may remain in this world in order to disseminate the specific knowledge of the personality of Godhead. Very, very similar thought is done by another example is Lord Rama and leaving behind his great devotee Hanumanji. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the specific qualification for becoming representative of the Lord is that one should be unaffected by the modes of material nature. So, the three modes of material nature, there is a constant competition, mode of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And one has to be consciously, again, progressively, slowly, step by step, needless to say, but one has to come to mode of goodness. And therefore, Bhagavad Gita very elaborately describes these three modes, right? We can Shraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, everything is divided into three modes. And one has to progressively cultivate the mode of goodness. In fact, the why we follow the four regulative principles is to cultivate the mode of goodness, right? And the epitome of mode of goodness is the person who is a qualified Brahmana. But Prabhupada says even mode of goodness is not enough. One has to transcend the goodness, and from Shuddha Sattva, one has to come to Shuddha Sattva or Vasudeva existence to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord is not affected by the modes, and similarly, pure devotee of the Lord is also not affected by the modes by mercy of the Supreme Lord. Just like, there is a very dangerous dog, and the dog is not going to affect the master. And if you are a friend of the master, the dog will not affect you as well because you are the friend of the master. Similarly, the three modes of material nature, they do not affect the Supreme Lord, and the pure devotee of the Lord who who is on the mode of this Shuddha Sattva platform. And what is the symptom of such a personality? Symptom of such a personality is that by his actions, minds, and words, he lives the life of the mission of the Supreme Lord. And such a personality even while living in this body, is called as a liberated soul. Jivan Muktaha sa uchyate. Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasa gira nikhilashvapi avasthasu Jivan Muktaha sa uchyate. Such a personality who has given his actions, minds, words, and living for the mission of the Lord is actually called as Jivan Mukta, although he is living in a present body. Uddhava was such a personality. Uddhava was a Jivan Mukta personality, and the Lord thought that let him remain behind and spread this knowledge which Lord and Uddhava they spoke amongst themselves before the departure of the Supreme Lord. And Prabhupada says, such a devotee like Uddhava, one who is a Jivan Mukta, can withstand all the onslaughts of material nature and therefore is known as Goswami, who can actually penetrate the mysteries of Lord's transcendental loving relationship. Right. So this is how Lord now made up his mind that let Uddhava remain and to propagate this transcendental knowledge. We'll just read the translation of it, the next one and translation. Text 32. एवं त्रिलोकगुरुणा सन्दिष्टा शब्दयोनिना भद्रयाश्रमम् आसाद्य हरिम् ईजे समाधिना. Translation.
Shukadeva
Translation.
Goswami.
Sukadeva Swami informed the king that Uddhav, being thus instructed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all Vedic knowledge and the spiritual master of the three worlds, reached the pilgrimage site of Bhadrakashrama and engaged himself there in trance to satisfy the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. So being thus informed, Shukadeva Goswami informed the king that Uddhava, that being thus instructed by the Supreme Lord, how? By the gesture. Okay. The Lord only just made a gesture that he should leave to Badrikashram, and thus he started for Badrikashram and engaged there in trance to satisfy the Supreme Lord. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. What is the meaning of Kalevar?
Kalevara means the body left behind is called as Kalevaram. Like Bhagavad Gita also says, lifeless body is generally called as Kalevar.
Okay, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Bhagavad Gita, there is a one shloka about Kalevaram. What is the shloka? Somebody can say.
Vasamsi jirnani
No, that is not. One who is remembers me at the time of quitting his body, there word Kalevaram comes.
vapi smaran bhavan chajan chanche Kalevaram.
Kalevaram, yes. Yam yam vapi smaran bhavan. Tyajati ante Kalevaram. That Tyajati ante Kalevaram. Kalevaram means this body. When one is going to give up this body, when one remembers whatever thing he remembers, he or she remembers, they will attain that bhava in the next life. Tam tameva iti kaunteya. Sada tat bhava bhavita. So there the word Kalevaram comes.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Prabhupada, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. 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 Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.